Many companies say I have principles and I have vision and mission, but you only see that once in an annual day. But Amazon's leadership principle, it's applied every day. In every meeting, somebody would ask you about what about that leadership principle on customer obsession? Is your decision that you're making obsessed on the customer? It looks like the customer is suffering. This is more for profit, and then you can kill that decision right then and there, right? So they really value their leadership principles and they apply it in every day. Google is a brilliant company, but they were not successful versus Meta was, Twitter was. Just because you're good at doing one thing necessarily mean you'll be good at something else. Social media is about humans connecting, understanding their emotions and all those things. And Google was all about engineering great things, right? So I think
let's start with the career topic. Could you briefly walk us through your career path?
Sure. Well, out of school, I started working in India in hardware engineering. And then I came to America in 1998. And I've been working in data center infrastructure ever since. I worked for Synopsys. Then I worked for 5 years at Google. Then I was one of the early employees in a startup, Twitter. Then did 3 years in India, building up Reliance Jio. It's like Kakao, like a telco company. And then 6 years in Amazon. And now I've been with Samsung for 4 years now.
Then could you tell me about your educational background?
Sure. I did my undergrad in electronics. And then I came to America. And while I was working, I took a master's from San Jose State in engineering and an MBA. And then later on, I went to USC to get doctorate in organizational leadership.
Then when and why did you come to the America?
Well, I came to America in 1998. The dot-com boom was happening. And, America was an exciting place to work in dot-com. So,
Okay, then let's talk about some of the company that you have experienced. So what did you work on at Google?
yeah, so when I joined Google, Google had only a couple of data centers, and Google wanted to expand their footprint all over the world. So my job was to lead a team of project managers who were responsible for working with around 50 plus teams to put new Google footprint in new countries, right? So say Europe, say Korea, so India, right? So we need to work with so many different teams to make that happen.
So at that time, there's no search engine in Google?
No, search engine was there, but it was all of that search was redirected data center in America and just one or two in Europe. And the way search works, it's much better if you're nearer to your customer, right? And the world's population is more outside America than inside, right? So you want to put data centers in every country, Australia, New Zealand, Asia, Korea, Japan, Singapore, every place, right? My job was to expand our infrastructure, which means the data centers, the networking, the computers, this software that serves the search to every country in the world or every city within a country.
So that is the time of expanding the Google to global company.
Correct.
Then since I know that Google was founded in 1998, so you were there in the early days around 2005.
Right.
So what was it like?
Well, Google was like a brand new experience. It was more a college environment than a working environment, right? So this is a function of also being in the Bay Area, right? So the dot-com boom changed the company culture here, and it became very casual. People wearing shorts, people having fun at work. We, like Google, had like so many cafes where there was a lot of free food, a lot of activities for people to do in the office. So it was fun. It was more casual, more like a bunch of people having fun, but also a bunch of people carefully selected, right? They were hiring from the best schools and things like that. So very smart people, yet very humble people. So it was a lot of fun.
Then is that is a special company culture at that time in like Google?
Yeah, it's not just Google, but the whole Bay Area, right? It's always been, making it simple, keeping it more effective, right? It's very little bureaucracy and a lot of work being done, right? But a lot of fun had at the same time. And that culture has just kept on building itself in Bay Area.
Okay. Then what was corporate culture focus at Google, do you think?
Well, the Google's mission or motto is do no evil, right? So Google has always thought about, making world a better place, right? So it was always about doing the right thing. In Google, it was always about being right. Anybody could speak to anybody. Like if you are a low-level employee and you wanted to walk up to the CEO and give an idea, it's okay. It's promoted actually, right? So there is no bureaucracy and levels. Anybody could talk to anybody. You just need to know what you're talking about and work hard, right? So
Okay, then after leaving Google, you worked at Twitter. Could you explain why you decided to make that career move?
sure. I mean, in English, we say, big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond, right? So in Google, by the time I left, Google was pretty big. They had over 20,000 people. You learned a lot, but you don't get to apply everything you learned in the same company, because larger companies, you have smaller functions. And Twitter was just starting, less than 100 people, had 25 million users. Their website was going down every time somebody scored a goal. So for me, it's an opportunity to have a bigger role and build something from scratch, right? And that was exciting.
Then what did you work on at Twitter too?
So in Twitter, I had to build a team from scratch and completely build their infrastructure. So Twitter was hosted on somebody else's, like entities, servers, and things like that. We had to build our own data centers, put our own servers, and deploy all the Twitter software on our own infrastructure. So my team was responsible for that end to end.
So you made the data infrastructure on there.
Correct.
Okay, then as you mentioned, the Twitter is also earlier level at the time. So what was it like?
Well, I mean, it's the same fun culture, which is like a bunch of kids hanging out in a dormitory and putting out ideas and trying new things, right? But Google, when I joined, they had already gone public. They had tons of money, lots of smart people. Twitter was a startup, so we need to be very cautious on the decisions we make, the finance, we had to be very careful and things like that. So it's the same culture, but a little bit more urgency because, it's a do or die situation, a little bit tight on cash. So you have to be very careful how you spend it. You can't make a lot of mistakes. You need to work really long hours because you have to do many different things. You can't hire a person to do this and hire one person has to play many different hats, so it's much more higher level of urgency. A lot of things are not done in a proper way, so you're creating everything from scratch, process, procedures, people, training people, hiring people, right? So very busy.
So you mean scratch means like a failure?
Scratch means from zero, starting from zero, right? So
It's like 0 to 1.
yeah,
Okay, then what was corporate culture focus at Twitter too?
it's pretty much the same. The only difference is, Twitter was one of the pioneers in social media, right? So there were not many social media companies at that time. Google tried a little bit, MySpace had died. Facebook was the only one, right? So Twitter introduced a new form of communication, right? It's all about, Facebook is not known people, regular people talking to everybody, a few people. One person, I know 10 people, right? Twitter was very different. It was all about celebrities, one person talking and a million people listening, right? So it's a very different paradigm in the social media world. But it was very interesting. We would have celebrities coming into our office every week because if you had to get a blue tick, you had to be physically present in the office. I met President Putin. I met Lady Gaga. We had Snoop Dogg come to our office and do a live jam session of music. So it was fun. Yeah, it was almost like working in the film industry.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Then in this era, there are also so many companies want to make their social media service in every country, but there are so many failure on their company because maybe Meta and Twitter like X or YouTube, something like that is just the social media in this era. But as you mentioned, the Twitter has successful results on the social media scene. So why do you think Twitter get success in that time?
Well, Google tried to make a social media many times,
Yes.
right? And Google is a brilliant company, but they were not successful, right? Versus Meta was, Twitter was, right? It is just because you're good at doing one thing necessarily mean you'll be good at something else. Social media is about humans connecting, understanding their emotions and all those things. And Google was all about engineering great things, right? So I think, knowing your customer really well, creating a differentiated product. And then, so a lot of success from Twitter was from that. There was a lot of user experience teams. They were continuously interviewing people on what works, what doesn't work. If they make a new feature, do they like it? If you don't like a new feature, do you kill it? So they were more connected, so the group of people who make the product really needs to know their customers. That's all about it,
So that means like focus on customer is the most important thing.
Of course. For customer is king, wherever you are. And if you really know your customer and the use case and the nuances, right? You may not be targeting the whole population. You might be just targeting a young demographic, or you might be just targeting, women, or so. Within the customers, what specific customer do you want is very important.
Then I know that Steve Jobs said that customers don't know what they want. Do you know this word?
Yeah.
Then how do you think about this word?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, sometimes, you expect you go and ask a customer and they'll tell you what they want and you can make it. That works a lot of time. But most of the successful products were developed when it didn't exist, right? So you need to anticipate the customer. You need to anticipate the need of the customer. But that being said, you need to be, once you have anticipated a need and created a product, you still need to closely keep in touch with the customer. Is the customer engaging well? Go talk to them and see, what do you like? What do you don't like? What's the feature you want, right? So you can't do that in vacuum. You need to have the pulse of the customer.
Okay, thank you. Then I heard that after that you went back to India. And how did you end up going back to India to work for Rilliance?
Well, home is home, right? So for me, coming to America, it's a very different culture and things like that. But all my family, friends were in India, right? So I had this dream that I would be able to go back and work there, right? And so Reliance Jio, which is Ambani, which is one of the largest conglomerates in India, they were trying to launch a 4G telco service all over the India, right? So they were looking for people who had experience in data center and infrastructure. So they specifically targeted me here and wanted me to come over there. So for me, it was an opportunity to see if I could work with my family in India, And I took a 3-year contract. And unfortunately, my kids wanted to study here, so I had to come back.
Then what were the cultural differences between working in the India and the US?
Well, India can be pretty bureaucratic, right? So India, there are levels, right? There is junior employee and manager and director, and things flow upwards in the funnel, right? Versus in America, America is loosely structured. It's freestyle, Anybody, if you can work hard and have great ideas, right? So things can be bureaucratic, things can be slow in India, right? So it takes a longer time to work. Finding talent, right? I mean, I think I'm successful in Google not because of me, because Google has so many other smart people. You need a group of hardworking and smart people to make things happen, So finding good talent right next to you, sitting on your next table, is very important. And that's difficult in India because, the top talent, you can't find it in one city, right? Because it's spread out all around the place. In Google and all, I remember one of the very first objectives when they went public was to create 100 new offices in all parts of the world, because if you can't bring all the smart people to where you want, you have to take your office to where smart people are.
Then after that, I know that you later joined Amazon. So what was the reason behind that decision?
My daughter was getting into high school, and she wanted to study here, so I decided to come back.
Then what did you work on at Amazon?
So Amazon is the pioneer in cloud computing, AWS, right? Yes. So I joined in AWS, and my responsibility as a director was to expand their footprint, put new regions in new countries, right? So one of the countries I launched just when I came up was Korea, right, in Korea. But we had to put those kind of regions everywhere in the world, every country in the world, right? So my team was responsible for working with other teams to come up with a blueprint on how a new region can be launched, where it should be launched, and then executing it. So making sure, there's a lot of things to do. A new region can cost you, $2 to $3 billion in the next, 5 years, right? So it's a big decision, and to execute, it's fun.
Then what is the corporate culture focus at Amazon too?
Amazon is a very, very different culture. Again, ultimately, when you look back, everything comes back to productivity and being very efficient and doing things. But Amazon has a very, very peculiar culture. First of all, in Amazon, every decision that's made is based on a document. You cannot go into a meeting and say, this is what I want to do. You can go into a meeting, you can bring out a document which literally explains what you want to do. Everybody in that room will read that document for 10 minutes, ask questions on why this will work or why this won't work, and then a decision is made, right? So one, you have to write down and have a very detailed blueprint of what you want to do. Two, it's a very, very harsh culture for people who are not used to it. Very, very busy. Everybody's working hard. They have a lot of leadership principles. So many companies say, I have principles and I have vision and mission, but you only see that once in an annual day. But Amazon's leadership principle it's applied every day. In every meeting, somebody will ask you about, what about that leadership principle on customer obsession? Is your decision that you're making obsessed on the customer? It looks like the customer is suffering there. This is more for profit. And then you can kill that decision right then and there, right? So they really value their leadership principles and they apply it in every day. Right, so I really found their culture very, very attractive. Everybody has vision statement and leadership principles, but Amazon really took it to the next level, where they made their principles and made every employee use it every day. Jeff Bezos saying, my biggest worry is as I hire hundreds of thousands of people, that the culture of the company gets diluted. They don't understand what the culture and leadership principles are anymore, which is very true. But, it's practice that makes things perfect. So Amazon practices their leadership principles on a daily basis, which is great.
That's interesting. Then is it okay to ask you about the Samsung?
Sure.
Oh, really? Then after that, you joined the Samsung, and what was the reason behind that decision too?
Well, I left Amazon because I wanted to do my PhD, right? And I thought it would take all my time. So it's not a PhD, it's more EDD, right? Doctorate in education, right? So later on when I retire, I want to start teaching, right? So that's the reason why I took it. I thought it will take my time, full time, right? Because Amazon, there is work-life balance, but, I definitely could not have done my studies along with working at Amazon, So I thought I would take a break and just study. But like 3 to 6 months down the lane, I'm like, you know what? It's not as time-consuming as I thought it would be. So Samsung reached out to me at that point of time for their hypergrowth strategy, because Samsung Semiconductor's largest customers are companies like Amazon and Google, so they wanted somebody who worked there, right? So I took the job.
Then what was the corporate culture focus at Samsung too?
Very different, right? Samsung is through and through Korean company, right? The culture is determined by our headquarters, which is in Korea. Very different, very family oriented, but very structured, right? There is a very clear structure here where there is a director, and so it follows the structure. There are a lot of cultural nuances. We use PowerPoints as documentation instead of Word documents like in Amazon. So it's very different culture. Not many people. So all the decision is made back in the headquarters. That's the first time for me. I've always worked in the headquarters. Now I'm working in a subsidiary, right? So decision is rightly made in Korea. So how do you work with them? How do you communicate with them? Right? The time is different, the language is different, right? So figuring all those things out took some time.
Then how do you think that Samsung get a high position in the semiconductor market?
Well, clearly they are technology leaders, right? So Samsung is the pioneer in memory business, right? So they are the very first people to do it, right? And see, the culture will be different for every company, but it is their own specific nuanced culture what made them successful. So if you take Google's culture and put it in Twitter, it won't work. If you take Twitter's culture and put it in Amazon, it won't work. Same product, same people, So Samsung is successful for Samsung's culture, right? Which is very quality oriented. Everybody respects everybody a lot. It's about collaboration, right? It is about customer success, right? But ultimately, the product is superior, right? Our memory products are the best in the world. Not many people make it, right? If you can see, there is 100 social media companies. How many companies make memory? 4 or 5. Right? There is SK Hynix, Samsung, Micron. That's about it. So it's a very hard industry to work through, and Samsung is just the best at it, both in technology, in their production, in their supply chain. Making the product is easy. Everybody uses electronics. Putting it in Europe, in every country in America, and every country in Asia, that's hard, right? So there is a lot. So it works too.
Okay. Then in Korea, we are always concentrated on will Samsung survive in the market? So if you feel uncomfortable, you need to answer. So in Korea, we always say Samsung is in danger because their memory market, DRAM market is beaten by Hynix from now on, maybe. So in your experience, how do you think Korea companies want to be sustainable or have a great achievement in the market? Then what will they should be changed in the
That's a great question, right? So that's happening to every company, right? There will be a pioneer. So Samsung is the pioneer in marketing industry. Because of that, they were the number one company, right? But then always, whenever there is a good market for some product, there will be competitors coming in. Competitors are much smaller, much more nimble, and they will, win some market share, right? And then someday the competitor might usurp the existing incumbent, right? It's all possible, right? But it's also possible not to be that.
That's right.
For example, every company has taken to try a pie out of Google. Google is still the search engine, right? So if a company becomes too big and too bulky and complacent and doesn't adapt and innovate continuously, the companies will die. But if the companies continue and adapt and change over time, because you cannot just say I'm the biggest guy in the world and what I do is right. If a small company is catching up, we need to study what are they doing right, and what are the lessons we learn, right? And Samsung is a company that's all about learning and adapting, right? So I'm sure I'm not a top level strategist at Samsung at this point of time, but I'm sure there are leaders out there thinking, saying, what are we not doing right that our market share is missing, or why is competition being successful? What do we need to do differently, right? So I'm sure there is think tank in Samsung out there right now thinking, what is it that is making other competitors successful, and taking steps to adapt and observe. So personally and selfishly, I would say Samsung will continue to be successful. We will learn from our lessons and mistakes and keep innovating, and we'll be there for a very long time, right? That's what I think. But generally, right, any company, if you are complacent, you will die. Many big companies have disappeared. Why? Because they thought they were too good and they were too rigid and not flexible and not changing with time and not investing enough in innovation and things like that. And that those companies will die. Why I think Samsung won't is because we are still the largest innovator in the world. We spend over $20 billion a year investing in developing new technologies. So we have never thought, hey, let's keep that money or pay dividends or things like that, right? So, culture-wise, running a bigger organization is much harder than running a small organization, right? So that is one thing that Samsung will need to pay really attention to. The bigger and bigger you keep getting, the more and more sluggish you can get. And this is where company culture comes in, and adapting so that you always say nimble. In Amazon, they used to call it the day one technology, day one mentality.
Yeah,
That means every day is day one. Don't think you are like an established company. Think about this is the first day in business, and how hard and how smart and how innovative you have to think to survive in this world, right? If you have that every day, that mentality, you will never fail. So I'm sure Samsung will have to look at some of those day one things too, which is, but it will not be for lack of trying or lack of innovation and things like that, because we are continuously investing in it. The company's culture, the products, everything is in the right place. All you are saying. Another thing is the world doesn't like monopoly, right? If it was just Samsung, everybody will break it up, because if it is monopoly, there is the risk of you're completely dependent upon them, right? So a single vendor in a market is not a good solution, nor a legal solution for the world, right? So it is fair that SK or somebody else is coming up. Competition will make us stronger, not weaker.
네, 여러분 안녕하세요. 어느덧 또 공채 시즌이 다가왔네요. 그래서 말인데, 혹시 경기도 청년들이라면 면접수당을 지원받을 수 있다는 사실을 알고 계셨나요? 취업 면접에 참여한 경기도에 거주 중인 18세에서 39세 청년들은 면접 참여 1회당 5만원의 지역 화폐를 지원해준다고 합니다. 총 10회나 지원을 해준다고 하니까 경기도에 거주 중인 분들이라면 꼭 이 정책을 활용하셨으면 좋겠고요. 꼭 그렇지 않더라도 취업을 준비하는 분들 모두 취업하시길 원하겠습니다. 감사합니다.